Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine. Not that I wish to imply you have been sleeping on the job. No one is more deserving of a rest, and all the effort in the world would have gone to waste until... well, let's just say your hour has come again. The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world. So wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes.
I'm Gabe Newell, and welcome back to Half-Life 2. It's been a long 20 years since its release. In this anniversary update, we've tried to respond to as many of the community's requests as possible. And while this might not be the absolute number one request from fans, I often hear how much people would like a commentary mode, so we're excited to finally make that happen. Not only was it a challenge to remember many of the details of Half-Life 2's development, but it's not easy to crack open decades-old computer code and wonder what the hell you were thinking way back then. Along with a dev commentary, we've cleaned up a bunch of old bugs and tried to leave things in a better shape than we found them. And at least this time, we had the luxury of knowing how things turned out in the end. To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. And please, let me know what you think. You can reach me at gaben@valvesoftware.com. Thanks, and have fun.
I was hoping I'd seen the last of him in City 4.
Early tech planning. Shipping a game always teaches us a lot. We finally get to find out which choices we made were good ones, and which were ones we should do differently next time. So after Half-Life 1, when we sat down to start thinking about what kind of sequel we could build, we had all kinds of player feedback to digest. From it, we tried to build a master list of things that Half-Life 2 was going to focus on. We didn't try to design a specific player experience. Instead, we found it more useful to approach the question from a technological standpoint. Black Mesa's security guards and scientists had worked well. What could we do if we pushed it really, really hard on characters? We liked our interactive storytelling. What could we build that would allow us to do even more of it, and a greater variety? The exploration and interaction with the Black Mesa was compelling to players. Maybe a physics system would allow us to take that further. In all these areas, we tried to imagine the best version of it could look like years in the future, and back solve from that a set of technological steps that might get us there.
About that beer I owed you. It's me, Gordon, Barney from Black Mesa. Hey, sorry for the scare. I had to put on a show for the cameras. I've been working undercover with civil protection. I can't take too long or they'll get suspicious. I'm way behind on my beating quota.
Yes, Barney, what is it? I'm in the middle of a critical test.
Sorry, Doc, but look who's here.
Great Scott! Gordon Freeman! I expected more warning.
Yeah, you and me both, Doc. He was about to board the express to Nova Prospect.
Well, Barney, what do you intend?
I'm thinking.
Alex is around here somewhere. She would have a better idea how to get him here.
Well, as long as he stays away from checkpoints, we should be okay. Listen, I gotta go, Doc. We're taking enough chances as it is.
Very well. And, Gordon, good to see you.
Okay, Gordon. You're gonna have to make your own way to Dr. Kleiner's lab. Oh, man, that's what I was afraid of. Get in here, Gordon, before you blow my cover.
Blocking tutorials.
Blocking tutorials 2. There are 2 failures of note in this tutorial. First, players can break it by tossing all the boxes out the window, which is obviously not great. This leaves them stuck and unable to continue, which we consider a game-stopping bug that must be fixed. A clean solution would have been to tweak the window or crate sizes so that the player could fit through but not the crates. The problem was that we really only caught this problem late in
Blocking tutorials. At times, we need to be certain the player has learned something, and the standard method, at least in game development, not in life, is to trap them behind a gate of some kind, where the player must demonstrate their knowledge to be able to continue. We try to disguise these gates as something natural, so it doesn't feel like the game has come to a halt. Of course, time, resources.
Blocking tutorials 3. The second failure in this tutorial space is a case of misteaching, where we accidentally teach the player something we didn't intend. This can be hard to avoid without extensive playtesting, since the game is always teaching, even when it's not by design. We cover a more extreme example of this later in Train Station. Some cases of misteaching are critical to fix, like if the player learns the wrong way to use a weapon or interact with a common element of the game. But this one was more subtle. While teaching players to move objects, we also taught them to stack physics objects to escape a space. Normally that's fine, except we don't deploy that puzzle later in the game, and teaching something irrelevant just clutters up their mental toolkit and makes it harder to readily keep useful things in mind later on. Worse, stacking objects to escape the play space become a problem later on, something we had to actively prevent in
fall damage. Teaching players how to do things.
Pick up that can. Contextualizing tutorials, creating a story scenario in which they happen, lets us do more than just stop the game to teach players something. We get to add narrative value to the moment. Here, teaching the player how to throw objects is combined with a narrative setup that gives them a choice in how to respond. After watching the Metro cops casually abuse citizens, it felt right to put the player in a similar position next. If they had opinions on how the citizens should have reacted, now they get to express them. Playtesting showed most players either complied or refused the request to pick up the can, but some tried to avoid the confrontation entirely. Others would comply initially, then retaliate after feeling humiliated. By keeping the moment relatively constrained, in both terms of player actions and the space itself, we could generally react appropriately to whatever choice they made.
Rather than try to answer every possible question you might It also requires planning and forethought that run in direct opposition to
playtesting. Playtesting is a core part of how we make games. We can never fully predict how players will respond or what they'll take away from what we've built. So we test to learn and hopefully improve. During a playtest, we don't guide or talk to the player, even if they're stuck.
Early in a Half-Life game, one of our goals is to make promises to the player.
The Citadel. We wanted the player's first view of City 17 to highlight the city.
Exploration.
After being herded through the train station by Metro cops, we wanted to give the player a chance to explore. This plaza offered several ways to interact with citizens, Metro cops, scanners, and the city infrastructure. We aimed for these interactions to continue building the world without needing explicit tutorials, and we refined them until they worked naturally, without any real training.
Instinct would inflict a fatal injury on our species. Instinct creates its own oppressors and bids us rise up against them. Instinct tells us that the unknown is a threat rather than an opportunity. Instinct slyly and covertly compels us away from
Strider. This simple moment is a promise that you'll encounter this enormous thing later in the game. Even an uncomplicated scene such as this really does require a lot of playtesting and iteration because of Half-Life's goal of not taking control away from the player.
Early game exploration. Up until this plaza, the player likely hasn't had to think much about their path, as it's been clear and straightforward. But here, we wanted to encourage exploration, which meant making the way forward less obvious, which can produce a feeling of being lost or, worse, confused, as you might expect. These kinds of shifts can be tough, especially early in the game, when the player is still learning the game's guidance cues. Here, it's further complicated by force-fielded checkpoints, which allow NPC citizens to move through, but restrict the player, leading many playtesters to believe that there was a way to bypass them. Ultimately, it was extensive testing that helped us find the right visibility for the alley forward, using lighting, layout, and a wooden crate, an object players have already used as a sign they're headed in the right direction, all to subtly guide them forward.
Let me read a letter I recently received. Dear Dr. B, why has the compound seen fit to suppress our reproductive cycle? Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Thank you for writing. Concern. Of course, your question touches on one of the basic biological impulses, with all its associated hopes and fears for the future of the species. I also detect some unspoken questions. Do our benefactors really know what's best for us?
Ropes. One of the things we noticed in all of the reference images that we gathered for City 17 was that there were cables and wires everywhere, and that they were a large part of the high-frequency detail in view. We loved the look of these older European cities enmeshed in the haphazard web of modern life. We felt like we needed a solution for cables, ropes, and similar elements, and we wanted them to be dynamic. Our level designers were eager to create plug puzzles, and connecting a cord to each plug helped players better understand the mechanics. Early in production, we built a rope system and iterated on it throughout development. Under the hood, each rope is made of multiple segments stretched between the two endpoints, and they can move independently. Each segment acts like a spring and responds to forces in the game, such as a gentle wind or the passing of a combine gunship overhead. When rendered, each segment is shown facing the camera and is bump mapped, which is crucial for giving the ropes a realistic, rounded appearance.
Playtesting Anecdote 1. One memorable playtest reminded us that we can never be certain what players are thinking or what lessons they've taken from their experience. This tester, after playing from the start, and stuck trying to open a door, spent several minutes going back and forth between the game and the keyboard settings. When we asked what they were looking for, they said they were searching for the inventory controls, thinking they could use an item they'd picked up earlier to unlock the door. While we'd seen them collect and drop several physics objects, they'd misunderstood what was happening. The tester believed that pressing the use key while holding an object moved it into an inventory, because the item dropped straight down. We knew it was just gravity, but their assumption wasn't crazy. Some adventure games of that era did slide items into an invisible inventory that way. We explained there was no inventory, and the playtest continued. Later, we considered whether we needed to address this, but since no other playtesters had the same confusion, and all of our potential solutions were more heavy-handed than necessary, we decided it was an outlier that was okay to remain unaddressed. It served as a good reminder, though, of how even the most subtle, overlooked details can mislead a player.
We should thank our benefactors for giving us respite from this overpowering thirst. They have thrown a switch and exorcised our demons in a single stroke. They have given us the strength we never could have summoned to overcome this compulsion. They have given us purpose. They have turned our eyes toward the stars. Let me assure you that the suppressing field will be shut off on the day that we have mastered ourselves, the day we can prove we no longer need it. And that day of transformation, I have it on good authority, is close at hand. Dear Dr. Green, why has the Combine seen fit to suppress our reproductive cycle? Sincerely, a concerned citizen. Thank you for writing, concerned. Of course, your question touches on one of the basic biological impulses, with all its associated hopes and fears for the future of the species. I also detect some unspoken questions. Do our benefactors really know what's best for us? What gives them the right to make this kind of decision for mankind? Will they ever deactivate the suppression field and let us breathe again? Get out of here. Get out of here. Rather than try to answer every possible question you might have unforeseen. First, let us consider the fact that for the first time ever, as a species, this simple fact has far-reaching implications. It requires radical rethinking and revision of our genetic imperatives. It also requires planning and forethought that run in direct opposition to our neural precepts. I find it helpful at times like these to remind myself that
Strider. This simple moment is a promise that you'll encounter this enormous thing later in the game. Even an uncomplicated scene such as this really does require a lot of playtesting and iteration because of Half-Life's goal of not taking control away from the player. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of small tweaks to ensure that as many players as possible are looking at the right place at the right time here. The street layout and the Metrocops scene are all set to guide the player's gaze, perfectly framing the Strider when it appears.
Seen fit to suppress our reproductive cycle. Sincerely, concerned citizen. Thank you for writing concern. Of course, your question touches on one of the basic biological issues.
Closed captions. During Half-Life 2 development, we were approached by folks interested in accessibility who encouraged us to go beyond the subtitle system we had built for Half-Life 1. They requested a full-featured closed captioning system to capture all game sounds, not just dialogue. This turned out to be a much tougher challenge than expected. Half-Life 2 produced a wide variety of sounds, and categorizing them for captions was crucial. Prioritization was also key. Dialogue needed to stand out, and it had to be clear who was speaking. Ambient sounds, like distant combat, were important for setting the mood in some levels, but less so if there was an enemy shooting nearby. Our level designers also often reuse sounds in different contexts, so sound might require captioning in one area, but not in another. Ultimately, every sound in the game ended up with its own caption data, formatted almost like a small version of HTML, giving us control over the visual style of each caption. As with the audio files, the caption data was too large to keep in memory, so we built an asynchronous caching system to handle it efficiently.
Physics simulation. Even though we began Half-Life 2 with a functional third-party physics simulation, it still took us years of additional work both on the simulation itself and its integration into the game until we felt like we could meet our designers' ambitions. Maintaining a shippable level of quality and performance was something we knew would be a challenge along the way, but the more subtle issue was actually figuring out what to simulate and to what extent. We can't simulate everything, and even if we could, there are game design reasons why the experience is better when we don't. In many cases, we deliberately bend the simulation to improve the player's experience. These adjustments usually go unnoticed because they align with player intentions. For example, we disable collisions between the player and large objects to let them turn in narrow spaces. Or we tweak the Combine rifle's alternate fire to gently guide the Combine ball toward enemies, making it more effective.
Materials and shaders. Half-Life 2 came out in the midst of a significant shift in 3D graphics, where the industry moved from textures to materials and shaders. In Half-Life 1, every surface had a texture, essentially an image wrapped onto the polygons of the surface. But by Half-Life 2, just 5 years later, every surface had both a material...
Cube maps. With the addition of materials and shaders, we needed a solution for reflective surfaces like glass and steel. These surfaces had to know what to reflect, but in 2003, we couldn't do any of that rendering in real time. So we developed the cube map.
Field of view. In Half-Life 1, we used a 90-degree field of view, or FOV, which was fairly standard for first-person shooters at the time. But during Half-Life 2's development, we grew unhappy with it. With our game's focus on characters, we'd put extensive effort into detailed facial and body animations. But the 90-degree FOV just didn't allow players to get close enough to fully appreciate that detail. So we began experimenting with a tighter FOV, and ultimately landed on 75 degrees. It took some adjustment for both us and players, and it required an additional FOV for view models, which are the player's weapon, held at the bottom of the screen. Their models were originally built with 90 degrees in mind, so they looked distorted at 75. But this changed.
Missing material. Early on in developing our low-level graphics code, we realized it would be difficult to spot polygons that weren't rendering due to a missing texture. When this happened, you typically just see black where the polygon should be, which could easily go unnoticed in darker scenes. To catch this bug more reliably, we created an error texture that would be visually unmistakable and generated automatically whenever a texture failed to load. This gave rise to the now iconic purple and black checkerboard texture, which has since taken on a life of its own well beyond Half-Life 2.
But insensible for an instant is its dark twin, superstition.
The raid. The section ahead, where the Metro cops raid the apartment while the player is inside, took a lot of iteration to get right. Generally, we design Half-Life to let players set their own pace, since people move through the game in a variety of ways. Some players run, ignoring anything that doesn't seem like a threat, while others methodically poke at everything. So, whenever we need to force a specific pace, it's always a challenge to ensure players perceive that pace and naturally play along. Since this is the first time we do this, we had to put in a lot of work to make it clear to the player that they needed to move quickly, and there's no time for exploration here.
Head for the roof! There's no time to lose! Here they come! Run for your life! Civil protection! Run for your life!
The raid. The section ahead, where the Metro cops raid the apartment while the player is inside, took a lot of iteration to get right. Generally, we design Half-Life to let players set their own pace, since people move through the game in a variety of ways. Some players run, ignoring anything that doesn't seem like a threat, while others methodically poke.
Head for the roof! There's no time to lose!
Attention residents. This block contains potential civil investment. Info. Cooperate.
Get in here, quick! Keep moving! Head for the roof!
Health and no HUD. The rooftop chase sequence posed a unique design challenge. We didn't want it to be a true gameplay obstacle, and our best case was for players to make it through on their first try. But we still wanted to create the sense of real danger, where players felt legitimately threatened if they didn't keep moving. The challenge was that without the HEV suit, players don't technically have a heads-up display or HUD, which means no way to show damage or remaining health. After some experimenting, we created a special health system for this section, using a red glow around the screen to indicate damage. Players reacted as we hoped, taking it as a sign to keep moving, and the chase unfolded as intended. To top it off, we made health regenerate quickly so the glow wouldn't linger, reinforcing to players that running was indeed the right choice, and ensuring players weren't taken down by a stray bullet at the end just because they dawdled or hesitated earlier on.
Playtesting Anecdote 2. In the upcoming section, we needed the player to be knocked down so Alex could save them. With limited time and resources, we simplified the encounter as much as possible, reusing existing systems and letting it play out like a normal combat sequence, with a custom event triggered when the player died. After a few playtests to fine-tune the timing, we moved on. But as we got close to shipping, we encountered a problem with a playtester who quick-saved constantly and immediately hit quick load whenever they thought they'd failed. When a Metro cop hit them, they quick loaded before Alex could step in, repeating this more than 10 times before we asked them to stop. At this stage of development, in the final bug-fixing phase, we had to limit ourselves to fixing only game-breaking issues.
Alex. Nailing Alex's design was a big challenge. We wanted the player to both respect and care for her. Saving Eli was a key player goal midway through the game, and we knew that getting players to care about that goal would be easier if they also cared about Alex and her relationship with her father. We intentionally designed, wrote dialogue, and cast a voice actor for Alex to be savvy, capable, and relatable within the Combine-controlled world, while also making her attractive and charismatic. We aim to avoid the objectification, exaggeration, and
interactive storytelling. When we started on Half-Life 2, storytelling in games was generally either high fidelity and linear, or low fidelity.
Funny, you showing up on this day in particular.
Kleiner's Lab. Kleiner's Lab was the first piece of storytelling we worked on, and the one that took the longest to figure out.
Choreography. The system we built and iterated on to deliver Half-Life 2's storytelling was internally called Choreo, short for choreography. Early on, we found it useful to imagine we were writing a play where one of the
FacePoser. The primary tool we built to power the Choreo system was called FacePoser, and inaccurately named Choreo command.
Delivery.
Writing. In the
character reactions.
Animation. Constructing believable human motion for our characters out of many discrete
character reactions. Figuring out what characters should react to and how was an ongoing challenge. At the core, we always want the game to respond to player input. However, any response from the game can be seen as a reward by the player. So, what characters react to and what they ignore teaches the player about the kind of input the game expects. As a result, we made sure to respond to things we wanted more of, like players tinkering with devices in the lab, and ignored behaviors we wanted less of, like players repeatedly slapping Kleiner in the face with a box over and over again. Seriously, we watched a playtester do it for 5 minutes straight.
Nonsense. Your talents surpass your loveliness.
Let's just see if this thing works, okay?
Well, is he here? There you are. Man, Gordon, you stirred up the hive. We can't keep him here long, Doc. It'll jeopardize everything we've worked for.
Don't worry, he's coming with me.
That's right, Barney. This is a red letter day. We'll inaugurate the new teleport with a double transmission. You mean it's working? For real this time? Because I still have nightmares about that cat. No, there's nothing to be nervous about.
What cat?
We've made major strides since then. Major strides.
What cat?
Doc, since he's not taking the streets, you might as well get him out of his cities. What? Oh dear, you're right. I almost forgot. Barney, I'll give you the honor. I've got to get back on my shift, but okay. Here we go. Ah! Damn it, get it off me! Lamar, there you are. I thought you got rid of that pest. Certainly not. Never fear, Gordon.
Voice actors. To create more responsive and multidimensional characters in Half-Life 2, we needed to evolve our approach to working with voice actors. While running through a script with a modicum of direction was sufficient for much of the NPC dialogue for Half-Life 1, for Half-Life 2, we decided to give the actors more of an opportunity to be involved in helping to define the characters and bring them to life. We provided much more story context to the actors, showing them the game world, the environments their characters inhabited, and the other characters they interacted with. We sought actors who could take all that information and synthesize it into their performances to elevate their characters beyond what we had imagined. We held multiple sessions with the main actors, allowing them to digest and build upon their characters over time. For scenes where characters are interacting with each other, we'd often cue an actor with performances from other actors in the scene to create a better sense of connection and flow. Though we'd arrive at the studio with a script and a plan for the recording session, we made sure that the actors felt empowered and had the space to bring their own ideas to the character and performances. Having animators attend the voiceover sessions also proved critical, as they were responsible for stitching the characters' dialogue together with physical actions and expressions to form the resulting choreo scene. Often, animators found that their plans for how a scene would play out evolved quite a bit after working with the voice actor.
Well, come on. Dr. Kleiner's waiting.
Monitors. We use monitors a lot for storytelling in Half-Life 2 in the episodes, so much so that we even make fun of ourselves for it. The problem is they're just too damn useful. They're fantastic for expanding the world by showing events happening elsewhere, and they provide an easy way to have characters talk without needing to explain how they all got to the player's location. Anyone who's ever written any kind of story, especially one with an ensemble cast, understands the unique frustration of trying to create natural reasons for all of your characters to come together in the same place. In this case, we were really happy with how the monitor allowed Alex to teleport away and then quickly appear in Eli's lab, making everything feel real and connected.
LT or before, Dober conclusive. Conditions could hardly be more ideal. That's what you said last time.
Hey, yeah, about that cat.
Initializing in 3, 2, 1. No fiddlesticks. What now?
Doctor, the plug.
Dear me, you're right. Gordon, would you mind plugging us in? Excellent.
You gonna let Gordon throw the switch?
Gordon, go right ahead. Very good. Final sequence. Commencing now.
I can't look.
Okay.
Well, did it work?
See for yourself.
Hey, Doc.
Thank goodness. My relief is almost palpable.
Fantastic work, Izzy.
Well, I can't take all the credit. Dr. Freeman proved an able assistant.
Let's go ahead and bring Gordon through now.
Right you are. Speak to you again in a few moments.
Good job, Gordon. Throwing that switch and all. I can see your MIT education really pays for itself.
All right, Barney. Your turn.
Gee, thanks.
Gordon, as soon as you're in position, we'll send you to Eli's.
And not a moment too soon.
Excellent. Initializing in 3, 2, 1. Barney, if you'd be so kind.
Good luck out there, Gordon.
Yes, indeed. We're ready to project you, Gordon. Bon voyage, and best of luck in your future endeavors. Final sequence. What the hell? What is it?
It's your freaking headhopper!
Rar, really? No!
Is Lamar with him? Forget about that thing!
He's coming through, Dad.
What's going on, Judy?
I'm not sure. It seems to be some kind of interference.
Gordon, stay put. We'll get you out of there.
Something's drawing him away.
What's the meaning of this? Who are you? How did you get in here?
Hey, take these back. I'm getting him out of there. That's just Wayne in the field. It will peel you apart.
Just lost Gordon. What's going on?
I wish I knew. I'm encountering unexpected interference.
Don't worry, Gordon.
There he is. Oh, we're losing him again.
The man I saw. I'm all but certain it was Gordon Freeman.
He didn't come through.
Then where is he?
Behind you. Shut it down. Shut it down.
Gordon, you must get out of here. Run!
Get down out of sight. I'll come find you.
At the time of Half-Life 2's release, most first-person shooters gave the player a gun or a melee weapon right off the bat, but we opted to start them empty-handed. Without a weapon, it was easier to train the player on the more novel ways they're able to interact with the world, and introduce them to our story. We wanted the player to transition from fugitive to the aggressor, and arming them at the right time created that moment naturally. By the time they finally get a weapon, they're done running away. They say sometimes the best way to win is to walk away, but we all know that's not true. The best way to win is to run towards something while shooting at it.
Hey, Gordon! Hey, Gordon! The Citadel's on full alert. I've never seen it lit up like that. Get out of City 17 as fast as you can, Gordon. Take the old canals, right? They'll get you to Eli's lab. It's a dangerous route, but there's a whole network of refugees, and they'll help you if they can. I'd come with you, but I gotta look after Dr. Kleiner. Oh, and before I forget, I think you dropped this back in Black Mesa. Good luck out there, buddy. You're gonna need it.
Dynamic mixing. During gameplay, many sounds are playing at the same time, but some are naturally more important than others, and we need to set the volumes of the sounds relative to each other to ensure that the important ones stand out. In a movie, this sound mixing is done as a post-process, but in a game, it happens real-time, responding to the player's actions, so we can't predict ahead of time which sounds will play simultaneously. To handle this, all the sounds are grouped into types and tagged with priorities. And during gameplay, the audio system monitors all the active sounds and lowers the volume of sounds in a group if a higher priority sound is playing. And this mixing is adjustable. If the gunshots need to be loud in one scene, we can make them higher priority there. If a specific line of dialogue needs to be heard clearly, it can then force all the other sounds to drop in volume.
Audio caching. Another problem we ran into was the sheer amount of audio in the game. With all the gameplay sounds, music, and dialogue, we had too much audio to be able to store it all in memory. Memory was at a premium in 2003. But as you can imagine, we need to be able to play sounds immediately, especially if they're gameplay related. So we built an audio cache, which stored only the first 125 milliseconds of every audio file and kept that in memory. That 125 millisecond time was our best guess for how long it would take us to be able to stream an audio file in from disk. Then, whenever a sound was played in-game,
Dynamic mixing. During gameplay, many sounds are playing at the same time, but some are naturally more important than others, and we need to set the volumes of the sounds relative to each other to ensure that the important ones stand out. In a movie, this sound mixing is done as a post-process, but in a game, it happens real-time, responding to the player's actions, so we can't predict ahead of time which sounds will play simultaneously. To handle this, all the sounds are grouped into types and tagged with priorities. And during gameplay, the audio system monitors all the active sounds and lowers the volume.
Audio caching. Another problem we ran into was the sheer amount of audio in the game. With all the gameplay sounds, music, and dialogue, we had too much audio to be able to store it all in memory. Memory was at a premium in 2003. But as you can imagine, we need to be able to play sounds immediately, especially if they're gameplay related. So we built an audio cache, which stored only the first 125 milliseconds of every audio file and kept that in memory. That 125 millisecond time was our best guess for how long it would take us to be able to stream an audio file in from disk. Then, whenever a sound was played...
Physics sound. Getting physics to feel right for the player meant that the sounds produced by physics had to sound right too. As humans, we're all used to how objects and materials sound during various interactions. Even if
automating DSP. All the sounds the player hears are processed through our digital signal processing system, or DSP.
Help me!
Metro Cop scene. This is another scene designed to make it clear that the Metro Cops are the bad guys, except this time the player has a weapon and can finally do something about it. That something comes out of the barrel of a gun. We knew we needed the player to feel righteous, and this moment was part of creating that. The Metro Cops are still human, unlike the rest of the Combine in the game, so we felt like we had to go the extra mile in making sure the player's actions felt like justice and not just wrath.
Get going!
By 6, unit down at Watpost Intake Hub, 5.
Staircase. There are situations throughout the game that stem from simple and quite straightforward design goals, and this staircase features 2 of them. The first was to frame the Citadel as it awakened, showing the player they stirred up the hive. The second was to showcase our ragdoll system. While it's standard now, in 2004 it was still a novelty to see bodies tumble realistically, and stairs provided a perfect stage to make that happen.
City 17 awakens. The early train station section was designed to make the city feel indifferent toward the player, as if Gordon is just another nameless, faceless citizen, ripe for subjugation. But during the tenement raid and rooftop chase, the city identifies the player as an anomaly and starts to stir. Now, with the player as the aggressor, the city fully turns its attention on them. The Overwatch PA system, first heard during the raid, played a key role in delivering this message. If players listen closely, there's a lot of information about the city's awareness. Even when players didn't pay attention, though, the audio treatment still conveyed the emotional message we were aiming for.
Attention protection. Stabilization program in the community. Respawn. Isolate. Inquire. Unidentified person of interest. Confirm your civil status with local
Scanners. Scanners presented a tricky game design challenge. While we liked how their dystopian presence helped convey the Combine occupation as an oppressive surveillance state, we didn't actually want them to shoot at the player. We found that aiming into the sky to hit a small mobile enemy with a constant height advantage was something we couldn't make fun. Since we loved their role in the story, we decided that in combat, scanners would serve primarily as eyes, alerting nearby enemies to the player's presence, a feature we reinforced with sound effects from the soldiers. Beyond that, they'd only be able to harass the player with bright lights and occasionally dive bomb after taking enough damage.
Lambda caches. Technically, the first Lambda cache is at Kleiner's lab, but this is the first one the player finds on their own. We added Lambda caches to encourage exploration and to hint at players where hidden resources could be found, with a fiction being that they were being placed by the Resistance as part of their underground rebellion. In Half-Life, the contents of supply crates were predetermined by the level design. In Shell 2, we introduced adaptive item crates that give the player whatever they are low on at the time, based on resource targets set by the level designer.
Pistol design. The standard pistol is the workhorse of the game, functioning not only as the first range weapon you learn to use, but also as a method to interact with physics and destructible objects at a safe distance for the entirety of the game. To help make it feel more responsive and fun to use, the pistol employs a refire mechanic that's unique to it in the game. The gun will fire as fast as the player can click their input button, meaning that they feel an instant response to their input, and the faster they can click, the faster they can shoot.
Local protection team immediately. Not biosignal detection.